Meeting will come to order.
You've been
Ready?
here since Tuesday?
Ready now. Okay, meeting will come to order. I'm passing the gavel to the chair.
He's always here.
Why, thank you, Chair.
You're welcome.
So our first presenter tonight is our Chief of Police.
Could we do introductions? I don't know if everybody knows everybody.
Do we have to?
Yes,
I know who you are.
that's.
All right, let's do
unfortunate.
introductions. You are Tom?
Tom Murdoch, yes.
Pat Barber. Alice McKinnon?
Brian Burke, Scott Levine.
Gary Brown. John LaCourse.
Julie Glover.
Tom Dronsfield.
Great. You have the floor.
Thank you. You've all had the budget, so I'm assuming you've all had a chance to take a look at it. I just want to start out with a brief statement. Since I took over as chief in 2014, the police department's activity has continued to increase. The last year that we tracked, from June of 2016 to July of 2017, we handled almost 12,000 calls for service. And the increase is not just in self-initiated activity, which is motor vehicle stops and arrests, but the general calls for service have just increased. The volume of traffic through town creates a lot of work for us. The increased business traffic, things like that. When the calls for service increase, the need to investigate these calls also increases, which is very time-consuming. The demand currently is putting a strain on our officers and the department's overtime budget. From 2005 to 2015, the department had 7 full-time officers, which included the chief. In the 2015-16 budget, I was able to hire an 8th officer. Prior to this, there had not been any additional staffing added to the police department since 2005. Based on the calls for service, in the 2017-2018 budget, I had requested a part-time 32-hour week position, which wouldn't have required any benefits to help augment our staffing. I got the 32-hour week position. What ended up happening was we lost the full-time position. So instead of gaining 32 hours, we actually lost 8 hours of employment of time to be on the road. So in order to properly investigate crimes, I either have to come in myself or bring an officer in on a day off or for overtime. And the problem with that is, because we're so busy, we're demanding a lot of our officers, especially on their off-duty time, to accomplish the goals of completing investigations in a timely manner, something we pride ourselves on. The units on duty are generally too busy handling calls to be able to dedicate any time to investigations. They've got to go call the call just to take care of the everyday stuff. So I've been doing everything possible to find ways to reduce the amount of time our officers are tied up. Over the past year, we've obtained grants to purchase what's called an e-citation system. Basically, each cruiser is now equipped with a scanning tool where they scan the driver's license. It populates the fields in the mobile data terminal, and the officers can then print the summons from the cruiser. There's a printer on the headrest on the passenger side. So that cuts a motor vehicle stop from 6 to 7 minutes down to about 2 to 3 minutes if it's just a normal stop. And it gets them right back out on the road quicker. Obviously, the MDTs, the mobile data terminals that we have in the cars, allows the officers to stay out on the road, write the reports. They hardly ever have to come back to the station to eat or go to the bathroom, but generally they can take care of things out on the road. And especially on an accident, the time it takes for a record to get to the scene, the officers generally have the reports written. And we're in the process now of being able to tie into the state with the accident reports, so we won't have to come back here and print them. As soon as it's entered, they hit send and they would go right to the state electronically. We've also added the IMC mobile system, which it does enable them to do all that. They can run driver's license, criminal record checks. We're now part of Cross Agency, which now allows an officer, before, if we want to check an individual, we just learned what we had in-house. Now we do cross-agency checks. We can tie into Portsmouth, Somersworth, Dover, anything in Stratford County, Concord, some of Belknap County is part of the system now. So it gives the officer more information on who it is they're actually dealing with. Our officers take great pride in the service that we provide to the town of Lee. And because of that, it's very stressful when we're overwhelmed due to not having enough staffing. The officers they're stressed because they want to handle all the calls. They know what I expect of them and the level of service that we want to provide to the town. So they're trying to handle all the calls and still not cut any corners to be able to get to the next call. And it gets stressful for them. You'll see in with my budget, I have numerous discussions with the officers. I always try to keep them involved in what's going on, listening to any things they have to maybe change or make things better. And they had all expressed an interest in being part of the budget process, especially asking for another full-time officer. So you'll see letters from each individual officer on how being short-staffed, not having enough people, affects them personally and professionally. Personally, it affects them because we're constantly adjusting our schedules to cover for vacation. You know, if just one person goes on vacation, it upsets the whole apple cart. And we have to change schedules around because we try not to leave somebody on by themselves in the evening because it's so busy. And a good example of that was just this past Sunday. Officer Millar was on by himself in the evening. We had a domestic situation down at Darbyfield Commons. Gentleman, 6'3", 245 pounds, big boy, convicted felon, numerous armed bank robberies, decided to break all the windows out of his wife's vehicle. We ended up arresting him. He was released on bail, went to Epping, and within 40 minutes had stolen a vehicle and was back at the house. We had to deal with him again. This time he resisted. Fortunately, we had Epping officers there to help our officer. But again, he's on by himself. Monday night, we got a call for a domestic issue on Duff Thompson, where one of the parties had fired a firearm in the house, shot a hole in the wall, then left in their vehicle, intoxicated. One officer went to the house, one officer looked for the vehicle, found the vehicle, ended up arresting the person for DWI and what we call reckless conduct. They made bail, were released to a friend who was supposed to watch them, and within 20 minutes was back at the house assaulting her wife. We were back at the house. In an attempt to arrest her, she fought with the officers. Officer Libby and Officer Annie Cole both got minor injuries. One of the camera, we were in the body cameras now, one of the mounts for the body camera was broken, and an Epping officer who came up to help us got kicked in the head. Those calls are more and more frequent. And when we have those calls, when the officers have to do more than just what we call talk to me into the handcuffs, when they have to go hands-on, they have to write a response to resistance report to me that I review to make sure they use the proper force necessary. Officer Cole and Officer Libby turned in their response to resistance reports to me. I reviewed them, and when I went to file them in 2017's file, it hit me. We've had 11 response to resistance calls this year. The most we've had in years past is 2. It's a change of the times. You know, with drugs and alcohol, people are just fighting, and just the general view of law enforcement in general. They're fighting with us. Something they want to do. They see it on TV. I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it. But it's just too dangerous to have an officer on by themselves. Now, we can't always be guaranteed that Barrington's going to have somebody, because they're even short-handed. So it's not a guarantee that you're going to get somebody. And if you do, how long is it going to take them to get there? And you can't just stand there and watch something happen. You have to step in and do it. So it's for those reasons, mainly, that I am requesting an 8th officer. Now, as far as the budget itself, you're going to see some changes in the payroll line item. All that was is I made a promotion to sergeant corporal, so we just moved the monies around to show that the monies are in that specific line item. Because at one point the sergeant's line item was just zeroed out. So as far as the payroll goes, no real changing in that. I did some research on law enforcement staffing. The FBI, the Department of Justice, a couple of universities do staffing surveys. And basically the lowest number on here shows that you should have, we should have 9.8 officers. They go per 1,000 for your population, how many officers you should have per 1,000. And if you look at the lowest one, it's 9.8. The highest one, the University of New Orleans says you should have 13.9 for our population. And it's 10.7, 10.7, 11.6, and then, like I said, the lowest is 9.8. Basically, other than the increased request for the additional officer, the additional full-time officer, the overtime, I was looking at the overtime budget. I try to cover as many shifts as I can when somebody's out, especially if they're out for training, whatnot. I can't cover it all. So I was looking at it, and I had asked Robin, because I had inherited a budget. And I asked Robin where the numbers came from for these, and she said, you know, these are just what I was told, put in for this much. And so I made some calls to other chiefs in the area, and the first thing they said was they look at how much vacation time is out that can be taken by their officers. You should be able to fill that. So when I looked at it, I said, well, we certainly fall short of that. You know, our officers traditionally don't take all the vacation time that they can. One or two may, a lot of them don't. Some of them don't. When I talk to them about it, it's because they feel guilty about taking vacation time and leaving somebody on shift by themselves. I told them I appreciate it, but they need to take their vacation time. I don't need them burning out. So the increase for that, I kept it as minimal as possible, but that should cover the amount of vacation time that officers can take, so I can backfill their shifts if needed with an overtime shift from another officer. Cell phones, I have 2 supervisors now. They both get the cell phone reimbursement. I don't particularly like them using their personal cell phones for department business. And fortunately, the plan that I actually have through Verizon, when they get to the point, they don't want to carry 2 phones, which I understand that. When they get to the point where their personal phone, their cell phone contracts are up, I would like to provide them with phones, and it's actually less money to provide them with a phone, an additional phone on my plan, than it is to pay them the stipend that we're paying them. And then once that's done, we should be able to get rid of the cell phone reimbursement. I also would like to, 10 years ago, we had cell phones, each car had a cell phone. And I don't know why that went away, but it did. But again, officers are using their own phones, and now sometimes they say, geez, so-and-so called me on my days off. I don't know why they called me on my personal phone. They didn't remember to block their number. So just a flip phone for each car so they can conduct business for the town without using their personal phone. And not only to mention the fact that if there is a crime that they're investigating, their cell phone records, to include their personal calls, can be subpoenaed. Evidence, calls for service, investigations go up, so do the equipment that we need to investigate the crimes. So there's a slight increase in that. Overall, it's a little over a 9% increase as it stands. I tried to tighten everything up as much as I could and only ask for what I feel we really, really need. And it's not a want. I don't want an extra officer. We need an extra officer. It makes it too enticing for our good officers who are stressed and overworked and changing their schedules around. Most of them all have families. And then they see a bigger agency that A, pays more, but B, has enough staffing so that they're not by themselves, or they can take time off. It's not a stress issue. They're not worried about putting somebody out there by themselves. It's a quality of life issue for them. And we're fortunate. We have a great group of officers. None of them, I've talked to them all. We have one who's planning to leave, which is okay. We've known for a while that he wants to go to the sheriff's department where it's Monday through Friday. I get that. The rest of the officers, they absolutely love working here. They love the town. They love the residents. They love how much they're appreciated by the residents. A lot of my experienced guys who've worked for other agencies said, nobody's ever brought cookies or brownies or said thanks or waved. Especially Todd, who came from Manchester. He goes, if they waved, it was with one finger. So it's important for us to keep that going. And I'd like to have somebody I could put in a detective role. And what that also does is it could be a rotating 3-month rotation, so that they would make their schedule. If there were investigations, they could come in and make their schedule, work on their investigations, and that's twofold. Helps us get the investigations done, takes the workload off of the duty units, but it also gives each officer the mindset that, geez, 6 months, I get a 3-month rotation where I can come in and plain clothes some days, work on cases, not have to worry about hustling calls and humping a cruiser. So that is also kind of like a benefit of working here. That's all I have.
First of all, if you get the other officer, the new officer, will you have any time when there's a single officer on?
It'll be approximately 3 hours from about 3 in the morning to 6 in the morning, which, when we looked at our calls for service, that's the most quiet time.
You talk about putting a cell phone in the car. How do you do your data transfer now?
Cellular, there's an air card, what we call an air card, in the mobile data.
So that works off an air card, not off a hotspot?
Correct. Yeah.
And finally, what is your turnover rate, Chief?
Well,
Because I sympathize with the fact that we've always been a training ground.
exactly.
Yeah.
Lately, we've been very fortunate. We've been retaining people. Andy's been with us for almost 12 years. The sergeant's been back with us 3 years now. The corporal's been with us a little over 3 years now. And then we've just got new people, just in general. Brian Libby, who is doing an outstanding job. Just a pleasure to supervise. He's coming up on 1.5 years, 2 years. Absolutely loves working here. He started in Concord, didn't like the thump and dump type of law enforcement, different area over there, different way of policing. This is what he got in the law enforcement for, the community aspect of it, but it's busy enough that he can still be involved in things. And Antoinette, obviously we just hired her, she's going to the academy in January. She has a 3-year contract. So, and then Eric Millar, who's actually, looking to possibly go to the sheriff's department, he's been with us 7 years. So, between being able to get the pay rate up and training, equipment, we're starting to be able to hold on to people longer.
Chief, I really sympathize with the fact that I truly believe we are shorthanded in the police department today. And I'm very concerned about 3 years from now, because I don't know what Lee's going to look like 3 years from now. But I know it's going to be a whole lot busier than what it is for everything we do, and certainly for every first responder we have. And I don't know if we'll be able to keep up with the head count required or not, but one of the things that I thought about was, when I was in the service, when we were shorthanded, we started looking for what they call force multipliers. They weren't a person type of thing. What is the advantage or disadvantage, let's say, not for this year, but what about a K-9 unit?
We've looked at it. They're quite costly.
But so is a police officer.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. The problem I have in justifying that in the past has been our turnover, number one. I don't want to train somebody to be a K-9 officer and then have Dover PD offer them $15,000 more a year and then they just leave and all that money's gone. But we have access to K-9 officers. Barrington has a K-9, State Police always has a K-9 on duty. So there are plenty of K-9s in the area. So I didn't feel I could come to the board and justify the added expense when all we do is make a phone call, Rochester, Dover, all have K-9s.
Yeah, but when I think of a police officer by themselves at night on patrol, there's a big difference if a police officer gets out of the car by himself or he gets out of the car with a dog at the end of the leash.
Oh, absolutely.
And his ability to take control of the situation.
I think K-9's it's a phenomenal tool to add. The problem is, so we work 4 days on, 3 days off. So I have a K-9 officer, so they're on 4 days, but then I still got those other 3 days where there isn't a K-9 officer.
And you also can't cover more than one call.
Correct.
You'd have to go with the K-9 to one call and.
Correct. I mean, it is a great tool.
Right,
In
yeah.
some cases. For search and rescue, so many different things. But I looked back, because Annie Obscol had approached me several years ago. And I looked back also at how many times we've actually had a call where we needed a K-9 and couldn't get one, and it was rare. Again, because there are so many in the area. So I just didn't feel that I could come justify the expense.
Okay.
I'd agree with the chief, they're extremely expensive. Vet bills, training, constant training.
you have to dedicate a cruiser to that officer, take
We
him.
just got done discussing the amount of turnover we have, which is also very expensive. So the question is, part of it's a retention problem, and maybe that's solved with just pure cash, I don't know. But
And again, the officers are I haven't had anybody come to me and say, I need more money. They're grateful for what we've gotten them. And so I try to supplement it with training. If there's a particular field that they want to be a specialist in, the town, if we will benefit from it, absolutely, they go to those trainings. I haven't denied anybody for training. The equipment, they love the fact that when they pull up somewhere, somebody's always complimenting our cruisers, the equipment inside, the weapon systems we have, and that means something to them too. They have some pride, and that shows by how well they take care of the equipment. So in the areas that we're lacking, I try to make up for in the areas that we can afford to. So far, and there's always going to be that person, no matter what you give them, no matter how much you pay them, the grass is always going to be greener somewhere else, and you just can't retain them. Okay.
What is on your capital requests? Cruiser, I assume?
Yep.
Anything else? I don't remember.
Nope, just the cruiser.
Just the,
Chief, I'm sorry, Scott, I didn't hear the question.
usually they ask for a cruiser every year. I didn't see anything in here.
What
That was
is
in the
the
capital
operational
plan.
Well, the cruiser is actually in the new equipment line item.
Well, that's what I said. It's probably in the capital plan, but
No,
It's
it's
right here.
it's in the operating.
It's in the operating budget, to the new equipment.
Just new equipment on the bottom, see it?
It's not separated by, it's just in the new equipment line item.
Where do they normally run, Chief?
When you outfit them and everything, 36,000.
So there's enough money there for this?
Yeah, absolutely. And then the next couple of years, we'll actually be in really good shape, because I should be able to swap equipment, because I've got everything updated. We stick with the Chargers, should be able to start swapping equipment over. So we should be good for the next few years.
If you remember, Scott, a while back, we pushed it into the operational budget instead of going every single year to the legislative body and requesting, and the chief came up with a plan to, when they get to a certain amount, or is it how many years, I can't remember.
We get one car a year.
One car a year.
We're still playing catch up for that 1 year we didn't get a car. I still have two 2012s that have 160 and 130,000 miles. But that one's my take-home car, so that's limited, and the other one is now a detail car, so that's limited how much we use it.
I have a further question. Thank you for the description of how a person was promoted to corporal and we have a sergeant. Any other changes in the future you foresee in the next 2 or 3 years?
I would like to have a lieutenant. That's the part of my process of having a corporal and sergeant, is to groom somebody. And that also shows that there's, the issue with a small department is no upward movement. So if I make a lieutenant, that opens up a corporal spot, somebody's like, hey, I can move up a little bit. There are some people who never, ever, ever, ever want to be promoted. They're just as happy going through their career as a patrolman, and that's fine. So you don't always, it's not like you always have everybody in the department wants to move up and have stripes and have the responsibility. Some are just happy coming in and doing their job, and that's it. That's why the senior patrolman comes in, gives them a little status, they have a little stripe on their sleeve, but they don't have the supervisory responsibility, so they're not getting called at home. They're, just, it's, thank you for being here this long, and the criteria is a certain amount of time, 3 years you have to be here. You have to be an instructor in something, firearms or TASER or whatever, and a field training officer. Once you meet those requirements, then you're eligible to be a senior patrolman.
Thank you.
More questions? Well, thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Wonderful night.
Okay. There's a lot of people will be out running around.
What's that?
A lot of people will be out running around.
Oh, I know. You look at Cheney's, I guess Cheney's pit.
Yeah.
Is under purchase and sales. There's 37 homes right there that they're talking about putting in there. So, and I have a feeling that once they run that water line from Durham down to the circle, a lot of those junky places that nobody's doing anything with, I think
They'll pop up.
they'll pop up.
I agree.
I have a question for you.
The old gas station.
I have a question.
Yeah. Thought I heard that.
In the 10-year plan, it said, there's two bullets, it says apply for grant funds, National Highway Safety Administration for extra patrols, DUI, whatever, and also develop an active threat response plan. Are those still on your to-do list?
Done.
Done?
They're done. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we had the training on the active threat response.
So we did the
plan.
active shooter training.
No, we wrote a policy, and I sent Eric Millard to the school, and we did with employees.
Great, okay.
Yeah, and the grants, that's an ongoing thing. We looked, in the past 3 years, we've obtained almost $50,000 in grant money for equipment and extra patrols.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, have a good night. Yeah, warm them up for you, you're all set.
We are warmed up.
Soften the edges.
The library, are you here to represent the
I'm
library?
here, yes.
Are the trustees coming at all, do you know?
Some of them I thought were coming.
Shall we wait, why don't we wait a few minutes?
Sure.
Because it was supposed to be at 8:45.
Yeah, that's kind of long to sit.
Yeah, 7:45.
Yeah,
I told them I would be here by about 7:30, so
okay.
did you see the harvest moon out there?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It is a harvest moon
Beautiful,
too.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's also called the blood moon, you know, because it's a hunter's moon. It's closest to the equinox, which is why it's called harvest moon this time.
Yeah.
Usually it's in September, I mean, that frequently can be the
I
harvest.
should have
moon.
stopped because it would have been sitting right over the Flag Hill Winery,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and I didn't, I kept going. Man.
Nice picture. You staying on a job?
Yeah. But now that I've retired, decided not about it.
Alligators and.
Major disasters were not a problem because you could work. Problem was when you went to some small one where they needed to have a security manager, but you really only had a couple of hours work a day, and then you tried to look busy for another 6 hours. And then you're stuck in a hotel room on weekends, nights, those are the ones that were terrible.
Yeah.
I didn't mind the ones where you were busy and you worked and you,
Yeah. Do you know about the law that came up after Katrina? I think FEMA can, it might be Homeland Security too, I'm not sure, but they can request other federal employees from other agencies.
oh yeah, well, they could do that at Katrina too. We could always do that. They didn't do it until Katrina. They
Okay.
hadn't done it until Katrina, because when I was in Houston, I had the guys from the Department, cops from the Department of Transportation, DEA, US Marshal Service, because we just didn't have enough people to cover what we needed to cover.
And were they covering like offices or something, or were they?
Oh, they were only what? Katrina was screwed up someday, and a lot of the blame was not really with FEMA. Now, FEMA had some, but a lot of it was with Louisiana, and politics in Louisiana. Nigel wanted to be governor, Blanca was governor, and she was a nice person, but really clueless when it came to a disaster. And it was just, the two of them fighting together created a huge problem. But the other thing that happened is the Department of Homeland Security was new.
Yes.
And not only did FEMA get folded under, it used to be under the Office of the President, we got folded under, but things like Federal Protective Services, which were the GSA police, got folded under it. Now, they get no budget. They go totally off the fees that they charge for their services. So they saw the golden opportunity to charge FEMA for a lot of fees and try to take over that job.
I see.
And
Bill, Kristen, to
as it
put
turned
the
out,
other
they
tables,
wound up
so
billions
we
of
can
dollars.
do a circle thing next time. Yes, they're making progress on responses. They deduct November 1st.
No,
The responses to the master plan, they deduct November 1st.
And the only thing you know if there's
Good.
So then you're going to coordinate the meetings back to
Oh, I had to go for 90 days all the time. That was
Really?
amazing. Yeah.
And
The
then
thing
when
is-
you came back, how long you get 2 weeks and then go back again?
Hmm?
On the major ones? They'd send you home after 90 days?
No, they'd kept me a year if I was willing to stay the
Got
year.
it, okay, yeah. Okay.
Ruth,
Yeah.
I didn't go to that meeting last night. How was that war correspondence?
Very
meeting?
interesting.
Was it? I
Yeah,
thought
it
would
was.
be.
Short, about 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was a good speaker.
Actual Scarlet wrote to him backwards and said he wanted me to be.
I see you missed my war cake.
Hmm?
You missed my war cake.
I said, no.
The war cake.
Yeah, we had war cake. Scott's war cake.
Yes, there was two of them.
What are they?
They're,
I wasn't there.
war cake was, it's butterless, milkless, and eggless. It's a cake that
Well,
they
it's
made
just a
during
bag
the
of
war.
flour.
Just a
Bag of flour.
They could get sugar, it has brown sugar. So it's molasses basically.
Oh,
It's very dense.
it's brown sugar and.
Yeah,
wheat.
well, mine was, the other one was a little bit lighter. So I used the one from the Betty Crocker recipe. Yes, this is the lady that did the presentation last night.
Oh.
She's from Wolfboro. She's a docent also in the Red Museum.
How did she get into the war correspondent?
I guess she's interested in it.
Her latest novel,
Yeah.
she's written a couple of novellas, but she finally just wrote a full novel, and the heroine was a war correspondent. So this talk came out of her research into war correspondence for her book, that she was then offering
Got
to
it.
talk.
I'm on chapter 6.
Cool.
Yes, it's called Under Fire. It starts out in New Hampshire. I'm still in New Hampshire though.
Oh, okay.
I haven't moved to London yet. But it's pretty good. She's a pretty good writer. Yep.
Women here, huh? Yeah. Holy smokes.
It's about a girl that comes from a town next to a large lake in the state of New Hampshire.
I'll leave it beside you.
Yeah, you
We'll just
It's called something else, but she works in her sister works in a ball bearing factory. Mystery thing.
That's a 55 years.
She's a reporter for the local newspaper.
Basically does some error.
Have you ever done the little right museum thing?
Oh, that's what I was talking about. That's where the war cake recipe came from.
Yes.
She's a docent at the Red Museum. One of our members is a.
That's on 28. So you hear this one, this is. Yeah, right over here. Yeah. It's before you get to more. It's in the busy section.
Terrible. Windows are open.
Yeah, I don't think the windows are open.
Two windows are
One
open.
of the other problems with a dog
It's hot
is
downstairs
usually
too.
specifically
It's
trained
one of those iffy days.
by
For drug or whatever.
drugs or search and rescue or actually,
That's Dalmatian, do you think?
actually patrol work, which
It's a lot of energy.
going into buildings ahead of them.
Was he born?
And
Yes. That's why.
training, if you try to double up on the
I
training,
think.
you get a dog that's kind of good
He's really smart.
at stuff.
He's only 6 months old.
And that's why they've gone away. Most of the tracks and dogs, the sheriff's department has bloodhounds. My biggest problem is that people transfer up to scent, like a bloodhound here. So that bloodhound did find a missing kid in about 10
I
minutes.
understand. The military still uses dogs quite well.
Yeah, but they're also, they search and find bad guys in general.
There's a lot of
And
things.
running up, the real calls come from here.
You guys realize we're all being taped,
Yeah, that's fine.
right? Just want to let you know,
Yeah.
in case you slip something out that, you know, you don't know. You got a secret?
I don't have any secrets. Oh, we got secret numbers. Everybody has secret numbers.
Drugs.
Ready?
drugs
Sure,
are
if you,
probably the most
no other trustees coming?
Well, Katrika is, and she's our treasurer, so I'd be happy if she would be here too.
But we can wait if you want, it's up to you guys.
Just a few more minutes, I think would be good.
Okay.
I think she'll be here.
We did occasionally, but we had a lot of large
Stand or sit?
industrial
Stand, podium.
Yeah, the podium.
areas of Surrey, but we had.
Yeah, it does look like a show. It is the light. That's
It's
the
light
light.
for when you do a presentation.
That's a light that clamps on, I guess. If you need more light.
Skip that one. So we're gonna just wait a couple more minutes, because their treasurer is coming, hopefully.
did see the tape recording.
Well, that's different.
No, I mean video, it's being
It's
video
video.
recorded.
Okay.
Yeah, right there.
From there, they use that for transcription.
But it's both going, I knew that.
Yeah, it's watching you.
Now, are we on television too?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't know
Smile.
if it's getting a view, but.
You're on Candy camera.
Open iBooks.
So I can tell my wife she can tune into these.
Oh, yeah. She needs to fall asleep, just tell her to turn it on.
You gotta have something better to do than watch this. God.
Open iBooks.
Yeah, how much? When I'm sitting here, it just barely gets me, so you three probably aren't being picked up at all.
Or just voices
Probably
in the dark?
Disembodied voices.
ghostly.
I don't know, I saw it on the TV last night, and you were all there.
No, I met them all there, but I think it cuts off. So you
Oh,
can't
yeah,
hear.
right about the corner of
Yeah,
the
so I don't think they're included. But her book is very good. I was a little bit skeptical, but she's a pretty good writer. I'm intrigued. I sit there and, another chapter, no, I won't do another, no, I'll do another chapter.
It's supposed to be the first of a trilogy,
Yeah,
too.
but it's pretty engaging. So
Did the
far,
research.
yeah, well, so far she's investigated her sister's disappearance, so. But you definitely get the woman reporter and the issues that they have to deal with going into that, so. Oh, and I was mistaken. Emma Bugsby didn't work for the Post, it was the Herald and then the Herald Tribune.
Yeah.
So that's what she was working.
Someone else came in the library today, said they had a relative who's a correspondent for World War I.
Jeez, just interesting. But I thought she was a good speaker. I learned some things,
They did them
so
all out. They used to be in their personnel.
That's good.
And it's,
I'm looking forward to the one that's next month. Because I've heard his presentation before.
The General Sullivan?
Yeah, but he supposedly changes things around. So if you hear multiple presentations, you're not, it's not all going to be the same because he moves things in and out and stuff, so. But we have a special gift for him as well.
Most drove me nuts before.
So what happened with the heat? Did somebody leave it on or? Because nobody can touch that thing, right?
Terrible.
well,
Yeah, so how,
it's 81 in here.
yes,
Will windows be able to?
maybe.
That was gonna be cooler this time of year.
Oh, it's a nice breeze.
Yeah, let it, yeah.
Let's move the meeting to the back of the room.
Yeah.
See what we can do. So when they put this video, put a little music in,
Dead time.
but we're with the dead time.
For that one person that watches it, they'll just have to suffer.
Popcorn time.
Bathroom break, intermission.
Well, somebody's gonna have to pick out the music for the elevators.
Oh, jeez.
The elevators.
Elevator music.
You gotta have elevators.
Well, we'll get a town decal, Stanley, and have a town music.
Shall we start?
Yeah.
So now it's the library's turn.
Yes. I'm Annie Gazowski, Chair of the Library Trustees, and this is our Library Director, Ruth Eifert. Most of you know her, I think.
Is there anybody here you don't know? Do you know Tom?
No?
Tom Murdoch?
Hi, Tom.
Everybody else, you know?
Joe.
You know Brian?
Joe, your father?
Yes.
The physics
You
good?
got that?
We've been around for a while.
Yes.
better.
I know him
Electrical
more than I know
engineering.
you.
Oh, all right.
With John.
Do you know Brian?
Brian?
I don't know Brian Burke.
Brian Burke. Oh, yeah, now that you take off your glasses, I see who you are. I do know you.
I know, I've been hiding for 15 years.
Well, I wanted to say just a brief word. Thank you for having me as your library director for the last 2.5 years. I'm now starting my 3rd fiscal year cycle. And this year is the 125th birthday of the library, and in 125 years, you've had 13 librarians. I'm number 13. So the average seems to be about 10 years.
Yeah.
So, you know, we've got 2.5 down.
Got a while to go.
Got a while to go yet. Yeah, so I thought that was really kind of interesting that I'm number 13, but out of 125 years, that's really not bad. We started upstairs at the town hall. We were open Saturdays only, from about 2 to 4. Slowly they increased those hours a little bit, so the librarian was only there, Lizzie Stearns was only there just Saturday afternoons. So they slowly increased the hours little by little, till we moved to where we are now, in
Some of those
1962.
books are still on those shelves.
I'm going to bring them over to the library soon, yes, a couple armloads full. I haven't done it yet. That was it. So, our budget request. I'll just go through some of the highlights, things that we're looking for. In terms of our miscellaneous to be offset by revenue, also known as quarterly payments, that we get them quarterly. That amount, we're asking for $1,000 increase in that line item, and that is simply for the electricity. The last 3 months of this year, or the first 3 months of this fiscal year, our electric bill has been over $500 a month. So if you calculate that out for 12 months, we're looking at about $6,000. The third page, I don't know how you have yours arranged. I know you have the first page, which is the budget page, and you have a little explanation summary, blue pages. And I sent along an operating budget that's got yellow stripe. Do you have? That's it. It's our operating budget. There should be 3 extra pages with additional information on them. The one that says operating budget, if you look at the electricity line item, there is a mistake in the 2017 actual electricity bill was actually $4,700. We budgeted $4,200, we spent $4,700. 2018, we've budgeted for $4,200. We anticipate spending about $5,200 or a little more. So we're asking for $5,200. That's the only line item increase in this trustees revenue offset. Part of what we do is we do anticipate revenue, and the second page of our additional information is our anticipated revenue, just to give you an idea where those revenues come from. And these are the particular line items, what we actually received in fiscal year 16-17, what we anticipate for this current year and the next year. Our book sale revenue is donations to the library and books we've taken out of the collection. Copier is for printing and making copies. We offer a public fax machine. Doesn't bring in a lot of money, but a little bit. It tends to cover the toner, which we replace probably once a year. We don't charge fines, but we do have a conscience jar. You would be surprised how many people say, "Oh, this is a couple days late, what do I owe you?" I say, we don't charge fines, but we've got a conscience jar, and we'll get either a pocket full of change or $1 here or there, so that's where those things come from. Sometimes people just say, oh, just, I really like this magazine, drop $1 in there. So, okay. We do take gifts and donations. Most of them tend to be memorial gifts. Had a really cool experience this year where I got an email from someone on the other side of the country who wanted to give a gift for one of our patrons. I know this person uses the library, so I really want to give a gift. So through our contacts, we got Pinewood Yankee Farms on board, and they managed to get some flowers to the recipient, who then donated some money in memory. So it was a wonderful little story that happened through our connections, and it was really great that I was able to call Tina and say, could you put something together, deliver it? Oh yeah, no problem. So we do get a little bit of money each year from donations. We can't guarantee those, but we're always happy to have them. We do get a little bit of interest from our 2 bank accounts, precious little. Lost titles, that money goes right back into the budget to replace titles that we decide that we really do want to replace. Otherwise, we can use that to purchase another title of another sort. We do get non-resident fees. We have we charge $30 a year for non-residents unless they pay taxes in town, in which there's no charge. And we have a number of part-year residents, people who come to use the campgrounds and stay for the 6 months. We give them a 6-month card at half fare. So we have currently 32 full-year non-tax-paying, non-residents. So we don't bring in a whole lot of money in the non-resident fee, but actually we do better than lost titles. So. And an interesting statistic, we have currently 2,300 patrons, but of those 2,300, about 1,400 are actively using their cards. We issue about 150 cards a year to new people coming in or those who haven't had a card before. We do track if it's just changing address or just updating, that's a different statistic. We don't count that as new, it's only strictly new cards. And every April we do go through the database and eliminate library cards for people we know have moved out of the state, who have passed on. Michelle is really good about knowing who those people are, so we do purge the records to try and keep them as current as possible.
Out of curiosity,
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, for people who just use the electronic resources like myself, do you still show up as active?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We also, our non-resident circulation only makes up about 6% of our total circulation is attributed to non-residents. So of those 32 full-year residents, they actually do a pretty good circulation from us. The last page is the Friends of the Library. They are a nonprofit corporation. I don't know if they're incorporated, they're not incorporated, they're a nonprofit. But they do help bolster our programs, specifically the Museum Pass program, which they pay for entirely, and that offers discounted admission to 12 area museums. Those get used quite a bit. We do share a couple passes with the Madbury and Durham libraries, so that's what they do. They pay for after-school snacks, for after-school programs. For the number of years they've done the tree lighting and the Christmas concert, which they're planning to do this year, Saturday, December 2nd. One mark your calendar. So from the Friends support, it's about $3,700. We don't actually see all those dollars because the majority of that $2,300 actually they pay for museum passes, so it's not revenue coming in. So we don't count Friends money as revenue, but they do help out a lot, and they help to bolster our summer programs especially. We look for the little incentives that they pay for, gift cards and such for summer reading program. So our request this year, we are looking to change one of our staff members from part-time to full-time. My assistant librarian currently works 35 hours a week. We want to move her up to 40 hours a week. And one of our reasons for trying to do that is in our normal schedule, we try and have 2 people in the library whenever the library is open to the public. There are currently 2 mornings a week that we are open but not open. So we're open because we have a program going on, but we only have 1 staff person. at the time in the library. So what I really want to do is to be able to say, we've got 2 staff people, we can open the doors, we can let anyone come in during those times that we're open, but we're not open. So Tuesday mornings, we have a game, adult games. That's not normally an open day, but they come in the morning and play games for an hour or so. And every other Wednesday, or first and third Wednesday, we have a knitting group that meets at the library before the library is officially open. There's always at least 1 staff member there, but for us to truly be open properly, we should have 2 staff members on hand. So that would amount to about a 1/8 full-time equivalent, adding 5 hours to 1 staff person. I did list some of our goals and objectives. We're really hoping to increase circulation by about 5% if we can. We have seen some increase. If you compare month to month from last year to this year, we're still trying to trend our way back up. We had circulations pretty good about 10 years ago. It fluctuates, so I'm hoping to bring it back up. And if we could get those few extra hours to be officially open, we might see a few more bodies through the door. Anyone have any questions for what we're looking for?
A couple of general ones, just for factual. What's property liability? I guess I'm asking Julie.
That's their share of the property insurance, so the insurance on the actual building and contents, as well as their share of general liability.
And that line that's ancillary PR expenses?
Yeah, we've struggled a bit in the past few years with the new software program to try to figure it out. So the way we're going to try it this year is we're just going to put the 1 lump sum in, and then we're going to do an internal back charge.
Okay, charge back, yeah.
Through the finance office. That's why if you look, there's a sheet also contained in the budget that just shows the personnel cost comparison by line.
Yeah.
Just to
Could
give
you
you.
speak up just a little bit?
Sure. If you notice, there's a spreadsheet also in the library budget that shows what the personnel costs, the budgeted costs would have been had we allocated them in all of the years for 16, 17, and 18.
I don't seem to have a copy of that. Could I just take a peek at it?
Oh,
This one.
no, it's this. Sorry.
I guess I'm.
I might be familiar with it, yeah.
Why is this separated out and other departments not?
Because over the past few years, through this budget process, there's been a desire to have the costs in the library budget actually reflect the costs of what it takes to run the library. Because they are different.
Special.
They're, we have our own body.
Okay.
They have their own governing body, which other departments do not. So.
Ruth, can I ask you a question about
Yes.
electricity? Has
Electricity.
the Energy Commission or Energy Committee looked at that?
Yes,
What's causing it to go up
did
so
that.
much?
I went back and pulled up all of my bills from the last 16 months or so with Eversource. Our usage has remained the same.
It's the rate change.
It's
There
the
was a
rate
change.
that's gone up.
Yeah.
So our usage for July and August was pretty similar to last July and August.
Yeah. Huh.
But the rate has gone up.
Can we choose different suppliers?
Nah.
Towns can't?
We can. We can.
Because the rate you're getting is probably like 11 cents a kilowatt hour?
Sounds about right. Is it 13, 11?
Eversource.
Yeah, because I'm paying 7.5, so
Well, do
Who
you
do you
have?
I have another supplier.
Oh.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the rule is about towns.
No, I mean, we should be able to do one of those.
Well, I
But
think-
remember also that the rates are much lower in the parts of town that are serviced by the co-op.
Co-op, yeah.
Yeah.
So who does public service, or Eversource? Is this building?
No, fortunately, this building is the co-op.
Oh, okay. Because the line's over there, isn't it?
The library is Eversource and this
Yeah.
building's co-op.
The town center is Eversource.
Yeah, we should look and see if we can switch?
Well, and that's one of our objectives for the next year is to upgrade lighting in the old schoolhouse building from the fluorescents to something more
The LEDs?
LEDs, something that's gonna give us more overall light, because I can't do any kind of shifting of the collection or rearranging a collection without addressing the lighting. I mean, it's bad enough you can't really read books, spines of the books on CD. If I could figure out a way to shift them so they're under those lights a little bit better, but
But the Energy Committee's been over there with their
they
consultant.
have, and I have a copy of the report from 2011.
Just
Yeah.
updated it though. Right, Karen?
Yes.
They just updated it,
Yeah, I
so.
don't know if the library's in that. I'm not sure.
Well, we're doing a program collaboratively on October 30th. Maybe I should ask them.
Just to see, if anything, to get their opinion in terms of, what's possible.
Yeah.
But if.
Have
With
they been in
11-foot
there?
ceilings, we're gonna need something special.
Have they been in there to look at the fixtures and so on, and count the bolts and?
Probably they have, not in my 2.5 years, but,
Well, no, this would be relatively recent, like,
yeah.
They just
Not
did a
not
scan of
relatively
this building.
recent.
I'll find out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you also tell me, you talked about you'd like to increase your patrons or
Yes.
usage. What's the distribution in the ages? Is it mostly still youth, or is it becoming more senior?
We don't track ages, other than a child card, which would be under 8th grade, or
Okay.
an adult. In
But your
terms of
estimate-
circulation, it's pretty even, whether they're juvenile materials going out or adult materials. The only caveat with that is children's books tend to go out in volume, 25 books, where adults will only take 5 books, same size stack. So your statistic is gonna be warped because kids take out more things by volume.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a sense, just the demographics of usage, and
Yeah.
do you foresee that changing in the future as?
I think traditionally libraries are seeing a lot of youth, a lot of youngsters. There's a little gap there from the middle school to high school range. Then they come back. College age, we don't get a lot of college age because the university's right there.
Of course.
So they're doing a lot of that circulation that we are not doing. And we're a small local library. We tend to have popular materials, not the kind of research materials that the students will be looking for. And then we see them later in life coming back for extra learning, senior learning, and the social interaction that they get. So one thing I get on a regular basis, comments from the public about the social aspect of the library. They're happy that we know who they are. They're happy that we can recommend things that they've read. Just one of those statistics last fiscal year, since we just finished the fiscal year, one of my staff regularly visits shut-ins. We have about 3 regular shut-ins. 51 times she went out to visit shut-ins last year. So, and sometimes they're age-related shut-ins, sometimes it's because they've been in the hospital and they're just recovering, so she delivers books back and forth. That's pretty good.
Thank you.
Sure.
Didn't you say story time? I mean, didn't our numbers increase this
Yes,
summer reading
yes, the
program?
summer
That-
reading program was,
We tracked the
Oh,
kids'
good.
usage through that, and that took a good jump this year.
yeah.
which-
Having drop-in programs really helped.
Mhm.
Scheduling programs, kids are already so scheduled all summer long that getting them to come to a scheduled library event was a little more difficult. But drop-in programs seem to work real well. We do get some non-library use of the library, so groups that are coming in to use our space. Not so much because we don't really have a friendly space for them to use, but we do get them. We had 23 groups last fiscal year use the library, but the attendance for that was 198 people. So that's pretty significant. Anything else? Any more questions, comments, wishes?
Under the schedule we were talking about of the various ancillary payroll
Yep.
costs, $24,710 in health insurance, is that coming from somewhere else? It shows a $20,000 increase over last year.
That's because I based all of the personnel costs on what the department submitted for wages and additional personnel. So when you move someone from a part-time position to a full-time position, then they become eligible for health insurance and the retirement, well, she's already in the retirement system.
Okay. So this is a real, that 20,000 is a real increase?
That is a real increase.
Okay.
Yep. What's interesting to note, though, if you look at the comparison between the proposed fiscal 19 and the fiscal 16, the numbers really are not that radically different.
Right.
And I know I say this every year relative to the health insurance, but that just depends on who you have working for you at the time and what their needs are for the health insurance.
Yep. So that 24,000 is 2 family plans? What is that? You usually give us a spreadsheet in terms of
Yep, that is.
no names.
That is a 2-person plan and a buyout. And 2 employees having life insurance and short-term and long-term disability.
Okay, but that, you usually give us a spreadsheet. Will that be on that at some point? Because I just got this, so I don't know if it's in here someplace or.
It should be.
Like I said, I just got it, so I don't know if it's in here someplace.
Well,
but-
yeah, well, again, obviously, we usually talk about that when we do.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
But Julie, you know this, the person that they're talking about moving up needs it. Okay, this is a real number.
That is a real number.
As opposed to the police where you have no idea who they're gonna hire, so you have to budget it.
Budget family plan.
Yeah, okay.
This is an existing staff member.
Mhm.
Existing.
I have lots of circulation statistics.
Go ahead.
Here, this was the big one. Fiscal year 18 circulation statistics are already seeing a 5% increase over last year. So July, August, September, things are looking good. And in case you didn't know, we do loan out tents and chairs
Tables.
and tables.
Really?
You know those 10 by 10 pop-up tents? We've got 4 of them right now. One's got a wonky leg, but they get borrowed on a regular basis.
You charge for them?
No,
donation or?
no. We'll take donations.
Gracefully accept.
We don't ask for them because, you know,
It's budget.
everything is supposed to be free to borrow from the library,
For
so.
residents, yeah.
Trustees have also been trying to come up with other things that we could purchase and loan out. So far, we're, sticking with it.
Someone
Tents,
suggested
tables, and chairs.
snowshoes, because we have the trails
Oh,
that get
okay.
used a lot. Cross-country
Yep.
skis. The bog doesn't freeze well enough for skating, does it?
We'll think about it.
Put some insurance on it.
Then our liability would go.
Oh, really?
You had said that this is 125 years anniversary, right?
Yeah,
Are you doing anything
1892.
about it?
We have been all year. Where you been? Cake, we had cake and we had stock.
Yeah.
I don't see banners.
It's on the library. It's on the front of the library. Big thing.
Celebrating 125 years.
We carried the banner last year in the
They
parade.
drive their old town, I don't see anything.
Wheeling in the right direction.
Vision coverage for the board members?
Yeah, I think
You gotta drive with your eyes open.
I don't want to see anything.
I see, and I forgot to bring my 125th anniversary birthday pens to give you.
See?
Stop by the library.
There we go.
Yes.
Just like this.
We'll show you this, we'll show you the sign on the building.
Do you have a history of the library?
In my head, and I've been researching them.
We published one in the
Did you?
E-Crier last spring.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I remember reading pieces of that, I was wondering if you'd put together a book or something, a booklet.
It was one page. We could
Yeah, kind of a
I just think it's kind of
one-page
interesting
synopsis.
that the
Yeah.
history's there, you might have
Because
photographs.
I was doing research on all librarians to find out how old they were when they took the job and how long they stayed. and all that fun
It's
stuff.
right here.
It's right there. Yeah,
I
I remember seeing that part,
Yeah,
yeah.
library, and there's pictures, pictures of it moving and stuff.
Yeah, I remember seeing that part.
So if you go to the library website and check under resources, we have a link to the new market advertiser that we
Yes.
have on microfilm. We had it digitized, the Historic Commission paid for the digitization of it. I've been working, I have a high school volunteer who's been clipping out the columns, and we're creating a document that then has a Word file attached to it. We're transcribing the lead column from the transcript, because, you know, the quality of the digitization is only as good as the tape was when they
Yes.
scanned it.
Yeah, I got it.
So there's some things that are not easily read, so we're creating a Word file that then you can search the document. And so I have about 6 or 8 years up so far, 1891 to about 1899. So, work in progress, come along. I
I'm
think
just
that's-
thinking about that because, you know, highway supervisor wrote these little books on the railroads and stuff. I think they're,
Have you seen the cemetery book we have that was published in
Cemetery book?
1938?
Yeah.
I had that digitized. I had a volunteer scan it and clean up the images to make them, the contrast a little bit better because it's fading. It's digitized, and I got from Randy his photographs that were taken around 1992. He took photographs of the cemeteries that he could find. So I'm going to mix those images with the digitized database, so that you might be able to, you know, find the cemetery and see a picture and find out where it is in case you want to drive there. So, working on our local history, you know, I think that's
I think
really
it's
going to be
impressive.
one of our strengths
Yeah.
as we progress,
Absolutely.
that you'll be able to get your bestseller just about any way you want it, online, through the airwaves, you know, at home on the beach. And you'll come to the library for your local information, because that's really going to be one of our strengths. We've got a fantastic New Hampshire history collection. Let me see it.
And the,
Good stuff.
next spring,
Next
we're gonna
spring.
get the presentation from Phyllis White about her book about the Lee schools.
Oh, that's right.
So that's gonna be.
That's a book I would love to digitize. That's a cool little book. Big book.
You know, the two things you guys do with the Historical Society in the spring and 2 in the fall,
Oh.
that's gonna be one of them in the
Yeah.
spring. That gives her I have to have it done, so
Right.
that's her
Deadline.
incentive, but.
The
that
other
would be
talk
very
is going to be
interesting.
about sawmills in Maine,
Ooh,
run by women
Yep.
during the war years.
that sounds interesting.
Yeah, we just got a copy of the book, just cataloged today, so that's coming up.
Interesting.
So another shameless plug, in 2 weeks, on October 18th, 7 o'clock downstairs, we're going to have a local couple who walk the Camino de Santiago, which is a historic pilgrimage way in northern Spain. Usually it's 500 miles, so they're going to be talking about walking the Pilgrim Way. So it should be really interesting. Any other questions for the library? Budget? No, all set, okay. Do we have a second
You
date?
do a great job.
Thank you. I enjoy my
You do.
job.
Do you have a second date to come in?
Unless you want.
Do you want to come back?
I'm always happy to give you statistics.
Good news, I always want to come back.
The presentation is on, what date is it? December what, to the board from the ABC?
I don't have that calendar in front of me.
It's the
It's
next,
take me a minute to find it.
well, it's the
It's the,
no, that's the
14th is a,
is the
It's
last.
internal budget.
Internal
it's
budget.
internal budget.
This
It's
is
the next
OPAS,
Monday.
internal.
It's the.
That's when the presentation is to the board, so if you want to come and find out what the ABC said.
I think it's gotta be the 18th.
December.
18th.
Of December.
Okay,
There you go.
all right.
All right,
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
So that's it for this evening, right?
Unless you got
You were the
something
only
else,
ones
Madam
on this?
Chairperson?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Close the window, and then I open it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Like,
We're adjourned.
Wow.
Will someone close the windows, or shall I go and do it?
oh, we're all done, so.
I wish I was-